I remember the night everything changed. It was raining, the kind of slow, steady rain that fills the silence between heartbeats. The air smelled like wet earth and regret. My twin sister, Liana, sat by the window, staring out into the dark, her reflection trembling on the glass. I could see the bruise on her jaw even in the dim light. It wasn't small, it wasn't new. "Don't look at me like that," she whispered. Her voice was fragile, a thread about to snap. "I'm not," I said, but my throat burned. She turned, and for a moment it was like staring into a mirror cracked down the middle. We had always looked the same chestnut hair, same soft eyes, same smile. But lately our reflections had grown apart. Mine still carried light. Hers was fading fast. "Did he do this again?" I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence was answer enough. Her husband, Evan, had always been charming in public, gentle, generous, attentive, the kind of man everyone said was a catch. But behind closed doors, he was something else entirely. A man with hands that punished and words that cut. I'd begged her to leave him before. She always said she would. But love, or whatever she still called it, kept her bound. "I can't go back," she said softly, eyes wet. "Not this time." "Then don't." She turned her face away, wiping at tears that kept coming. "He'll find me." "No, he won't," I said. My voice sounded stronger than I felt. "Not if we don't let him." The idea came before the fear did. We were identical, perfectly identical. It wasn't the first time people had mistaken us, even when we were little girls. I remembered once in school, switching places just for fun. Teachers, friends, even our own parents couldn't tell the difference. But this time, it wasn't for fun. "Liana," I said slowly, "what if we switch places?" She looked at me confused. "What?" "You disappear, I stay here, he won't know. He'll think you're still with him, still trapped. But you'll be free." Her breath caught. "You can't mean that." "I do." "Evan's dangerous, Maya. He'll hurt you." "He already hurt you," I said. My hands were shaking. "He's not going to touch you again. I won't let him." She stood, trembling, clutching her robe tighter. "You don't understand what he's like when he's angry." "I don't care," I said. "I can handle him." She stared at me for a long time, her face a mix of love and terror. Then she whispered, "You'd really do that for me." I smiled, though my chest ached. "You'd do it for me, wouldn't you?" She didn't answer, she just started to cry. We stayed up all night making the plan. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the air was heavy with what we were about to do. I gave her my ID, my phone, my clothes. I took hers. We practiced the way she spoke, the little tremor in her voice when she said his name. When she finally walked out the door, she looked like me. And when I looked in the mirror, I looked like her, a woman haunted, bruised, but standing. I didn't cry, not then. When Evan came home that evening, his key turned in the lock like a blade. He walked in smelling of expensive whiskey and arrogance. "You didn't answer your phone," he said, not looking at me right away. My heart hammered, but I forced my voice low, careful, the way Liana spoke when she was afraid. "Sorry, I left it upstairs." He didn't reply. He just looked at me, his eyes scanning my face like he was searching for something to break. "Dinner?" he asked. "I'll make it now." He moved closer, so close I could feel the heat of his breath. "Don't forget the rosemary this time. You always forget the rosemary." I nodded, pretending to remember something I'd never known. He kissed my cheek, light, almost tender, but the gesture made my skin crawl. As I cooked, I watched him from the corner of my eye. He was beautiful in the cruel way a storm is beautiful, magnetic, powerful, destructive. Every word he spoke was a test, every glance a threat. When he finally sat at the table, he reached for my hand. "You've been quiet lately," he said, cutting his steak with slow precision. I swallowed hard, just tired. He smiled, tired of me. The air went cold, I shook my head quickly. "No, never." He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. "Good, because we both know what happens when you disappoint me." I forced a smile. "Yes." My stomach turned. I wanted to scream, to throw the plate at his face, to tell him who I really was, but I couldn't. Not yet. That night, after he fell asleep, I crept into the bathroom and locked the door. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The bruise Liana had left behind was fading, but I could still feel it, like a shadow pressed into my skin. I whispered to my reflection, "You're doing this for her." For the first week, I played the part. I woke when he woke, cooked when he demanded, smiled when he expected. I learned the rhythms of his cruelty, the way he softened before he struck, the way he apologized before doing it again. Sometimes I thought I saw confusion in his eyes, like he sensed something different about me. But he never said it. At night, when he slept, I texted Liana from an old phone we hid in the attic. She was safe. She'd gone to stay with an old friend up north. She said she couldn't stop crying. She said she missed me. "I'm okay," I wrote back. "Stay hidden, don't come back." But every day, the line between pretending and becoming blurred. He'd reach for me and I'd freeze. He'd touch me and I'd flinch, not because I was acting, but because I hated him with every bone in my body. And yet, I had to smile through it all. Sometimes I thought about killing him. I imagined slipping something into his drink, pushing him down the stairs, setting fire to the house. But then I'd see his face when he was calm, charming, the way he'd been when Liana first fell for him, and I'd understand why she couldn't leave. He was a master of illusion. One evening, he came home earlier than usual. I was sitting on the porch, pretending to read. He looked at me strangely. "You've changed," he said. I froze. "What do you mean?" "You're different lately," he said, stepping closer. "You stand straighter, you look at me when I talk to you." My pulse raced. "Is that bad?" He tilted his head, his eyes sharp. "It's interesting." He smiled, but it wasn't kind. It was the kind of smile that made my stomach twist. Later that night, he asked me to dance. There was no music, just the hum of the refrigerator and the rain outside. He pulled me close, his hands gripping my waist too tightly. "Do you love me?" he asked, his voice a whisper against my ear. "Yes," I said automatically. He chuckled. "Say it like you mean it." "I love you," I whispered again. His grip loosened, and he kissed the top of my head. "Good girl." I wanted to vomit. That night, when he finally fell asleep, I went outside. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still wet, the smell of earth thick in the air. I walked barefoot across the grass, feeling the cold against my skin. For a moment, I wanted to keep walking, just disappear into the dark like my sister had. But I couldn't. Not yet. I had promised Liana that I'd make sure he never hurt anyone again. I didn't know how, but I knew I would. When I went back inside, I stood at the foot of the bed and looked at him, this man who'd broken my sister. His face looked peaceful in sleep, almost innocent. It made me hate him more. I whispered, "You have no idea what's coming." He didn't stir. The next morning, I woke before him. I made his coffee just the way he liked it, too bitter, too strong. When he came downstairs, he smiled at me. "You're early today," he said. "Trying to be better," I replied. He kissed my cheek again, and I didn't flinch this time, because I was no longer pretending to be her. I was something else entirely. Something colder. He didn't notice, but I did. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't just living my sister's life. I was rewriting it. Morning came with a chill that crept into my bones. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, watching Evan breathe beside me, the rise and fall of his chest steady, calm, undeserved. Every time his hand twitched in his sleep, I flinched. I had seen what those hands could do, what they had done to Liana. By dawn, I made up my mind. I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to destroy him, slowly, quietly, completely. He came downstairs at 8, dressed in his tailored gray suit. He smelled of cedarwood and control. "Morning, darling," he said casually, as if we were some perfect couple. "Morning," I replied, forcing a smile. "Coffee?" he asked. I handed him the cup, the one I'd made exactly how he liked it, strong, bitter, scalding. He took a sip, nodded. "Good, you're improving." "I'm trying," I said. He smirked. "You should try harder. You know, when you're quiet like this, I almost forget what a disappointment you can be." His words didn't sting the way they once did. Not anymore. I just nodded, watching him leave, his car disappearing down the driveway. The moment he was gone, I dropped the cup into the sink, my hands trembling. Rage surged through me, hot and steady. I gripped the counter to steady myself. Then I went to work. In the attic, I kept a small journal, one I'd started the night we switched. Every detail went into it. Dates, words, actions, proof. The bruises on my sister's face had faded, but I would not let her pain fade with them. Every insult, every threat, every cruel smirk, I wrote it all down. If Evan ever suspected something was wrong, I'd have enough to bury him alive. By noon, I'd finished my chores and sat in the garden, pretending to read, but inside I was watching, waiting. The neighbors walked their dogs past the gate. Mrs. Calloway waved as she always did. She used to tell me how lucky I was to have such a devoted husband. I'd smile back then. I don't smile anymore. Now, when I look at her, I wonder if she ever hears the fights through the walls, the screams muffled behind closed doors. I wonder if she ever pretended not to. That afternoon, I called Liana from the attic phone. "He doesn't suspect a thing," I whispered. "Are you sure?" Her voice trembled. "Yes, you just stay where you are." "I can't stand thinking of you there," she said, her voice cracking. "I can handle him," I said. "He can't hurt me the way he hurt you." There was silence on the line. Then she whispered, "Maya, please don't do anything stupid." "Don't worry," I said softly. "I'm not planning anything stupid." I was lying. That night, I searched his office. He kept everything locked, but keys were never a problem for me. I'd learned patience long ago. Inside his drawer, I found photos, receipts, and letters. None of them meant much until I saw one envelope tucked deep in the back. It was addressed to her. Not Liana, another woman. I unfolded the letter with shaking hands. His handwriting was unmistakable, sharp, cruel, almost arrogant. "You make me feel alive again. She'll never know. Soon I'll find a way out, I promise." He was cheating. Of course he was. Men like him always are. But what hit me hardest wasn't the betrayal. It was the realization that he had plans. To leave, to move on, to start over. I could almost laugh. He had no idea what kind of woman he was married to now. When he came home later that evening, I greeted him with the same quiet smile. I cooked dinner. I laughed at his stupid jokes. And when he kissed me goodnight, I let him. Because now I had something he didn't. Knowledge. The next few days passed in a strange rhythm. Him playing the perfect husband in public, me playing the perfect wife in private. But inside, I was cataloging everything. His work calls, his tone, his drinking, the way he flinched when I mentioned love. One evening, he came home earlier than expected. I was in the kitchen, humming softly, when he wrapped his arms around me from behind. "You smell different," he murmured against my neck. "Different good or different bad?" I asked carefully. He pulled back slightly, studying me. "Good, but not like you." My pulse quickened. "I guess I'm just trying new things." He smiled faintly. "Don't change too much. I like you just the way you are." That word made my stomach twist. When he turned away, I whispered under my breath, "You liked her just the way she was too, didn't you?" He didn't hear me. But the universe did. The following week, I decided to find her, the other woman, the one in the letters. It wasn't hard. Evan wasn't as clever as he thought. A few phone calls, a few glances at his work messages, and I had her name. Her name was Julia. She lived one town over, worked at a flower shop. She had kind eyes, the kind that hadn't yet learned to fear. I went there one afternoon, pretending to browse. She smiled at me, oblivious. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" she said. "Yes," I said, staring at her hands arranging roses. "You sell love by the dozen, don't you?" She laughed, something like that. "Do you believe in love?" I asked quietly. She blinked, surprised. "I think so, you do." "Not anymore." She tilted her head. "Has someone hurt you?" I smiled sadly. "You could say that." When I left the shop, I slipped one of Evan's letters into her mailbox. I didn't write a note. I didn't need to. The truth would find its way eventually. That night, Evan came home late. His tie was loose, his eyes glassy. "Where were you?" I asked softly. "Work," he said. "You smell like perfume." He froze. "What are you implying?" "Nothing," I said, turning away. "Just making an observation." He grabbed my wrist. "Don't start with me." The grip was tight, familiar. I felt my heart stutter. I looked him dead in the eye. "Then don't give me a reason to." He blinked, releasing me. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes, something almost like confusion. "Go to bed," he said quietly. But that night, he didn't sleep. I could feel it, the restless shifting beside me, the quiet sighs. Something had cracked. The next morning, the air was heavy with tension. He said little over breakfast. When he finally spoke, it was sharp, like glass. "Did you talk to anyone yesterday?" "No." "Don't lie to me." I met his gaze. Why would I? He stared at me, then shook his head. "Something's different about you." I smiled faintly. Maybe I've just had enough. He didn't reply. Later that day, he got a phone call while I was upstairs. I could hear his voice echoing faintly. "She what? How did she? No, I didn't tell her anything." I smiled to myself. Julia had read the letter. The trap was working. Over the next few days, he grew distant, angry, distracted. The man who once tried to control everything now struggled to control his own temper. At dinner, he snapped at me for burning the potatoes. "You can't do anything right," he said. I looked at him calmly. "Maybe you should find someone who can." His fork froze midair. He stared at me. "What did you just say?" "You heard me." He stood suddenly, knocking the chair back. "You think you can talk to me like that?" "Yes," I said. My voice didn't shake this time. His jaw clenched. "You're not yourself lately." Maybe I finally am. He stared at me for a long time, his eyes dark with something dangerous. But he didn't touch me, not that night. After he left the room, I exhaled. My hands trembled, but there was no fear, just adrenaline, power. For the first time, I'd seen him hesitate. That hesitation was a crack, and I was going to widen it until he broke. Over the next week, things escalated. He started questioning everything, where I went, who I spoke to, what I did. He checked my phone, he followed me once. But he was unraveling. Every lie he'd ever told was coming back for him, and I was there to watch it happen. One evening, he came home drunk. His tie was gone, his eyes wild. "You think I don't know what's going on?" he shouted. "You think I'm stupid." I stayed calm. "What are you talking about?" He slammed his fist on the table. "You've been talking to someone." I stared at him, and if I was. He froze. "You're lying." "I don't have to." He grabbed my arm, shaking me. "You're not her," he hissed. "You're not Liana." The world tilted. My heart stopped. He knew. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then I forced myself to smile. "What are you talking about?" He stared at me, his grip tightening. "You've changed too much. She was weak. You're not." I held his gaze. Maybe she learned. He laughed bitterly, pushing me back. "You think you're clever, don't you?" I steadied myself, my mind racing. "You're drunk, go to bed." But as he stumbled away, his eyes lingered on me. "You're not her," he repeated softly. When he finally went upstairs, I stood alone in the dark kitchen, my body shaking. He was close to the truth, too close. I went to the attic and called Liana. "He knows," I whispered. "What? Maya, you have to get out of there." "I can't," I said. "Not yet." "Please, I can't lose you too." "You won't," I said, though I wasn't sure. "But he's breaking, Liana, I can see it. One more push and he'll destroy himself." Her voice cracked. "You sound like him." The words hit me harder than I expected. I hung up without answering. When I went back downstairs, the letter I'd planted was gone from his desk. He'd found it. Good. He was going to learn what fear felt like. But I didn't realize then, fear works both ways. Because that night, when I went to bed, I found his side empty. And on my pillow, there was a single red rose. A rose from Julia's shop. And underneath it, a note. "You wanted to play games, my love. Let's play." I didn't sleep that night. The rose on my pillow was the same shade of red as Liana's bruises had been when she showed up at my door months ago. Deep, painful, fresh. I sat there staring at it for hours, my heart pounding like it wanted to break through my ribs. Evan had found the letter, and now he knew, not everything, but enough. The note underneath the rose was short, written in his perfect, deliberate handwriting. "You wanted to play games, my love. Let's play." His words burned into my mind. They weren't a threat, they were a promise. By morning, the house felt smaller. Every shadow seemed to hide him. Every sound made me flinch. The quiet wasn't peaceful anymore, it was heavy, waiting to explode. He came home early that day. No warning, no smile, just the sound of his keys dropping on the counter and his voice calling my name, calm and slow. "Liana," he said. I froze. He only called me that when he wanted to remind me who I was supposed to be. Yes, I answered. My voice sounded thin, fragile. He appeared in the doorway, his tie loose, his hair slightly messy, but his eyes were sharp like a knife in the dark. Where were you this afternoon? I was here, I said, cleaning. He tilted his head. Really? Because Julia called me. She said a strange woman came into her shop a few days ago, looked a lot like you. My heart skipped a beat. He smiled, cold, small, dangerous. Funny, isn't it? She said this woman asked strange questions, about love, about betrayal. I said nothing. He stepped closer. Was that you? I forced a small laugh. Why would I do that? He didn't move. I don't know, maybe because you like pretending to be something you're not. The silence stretched between us. He was testing me, watching every blink, every breath. Finally, he smiled again, too easily. Relax, darling, it's just a conversation. But his eyes said otherwise. That night, I couldn't eat. He watched me the entire dinner, his fork scraping against the plate like nails. When I stood to clear the dishes, his hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. You're trembling, he whispered. I'm fine. He leaned closer. Are you afraid of me, Liana? I looked at him, really looked. The man sitting across from me was no longer human in my eyes. He was a shadow wearing a smile. No, I said softly, not anymore. Something flickered in his expression, surprise maybe. Then he laughed. You should be. That night, I locked the bedroom door after he fell asleep. I dreamt of my sister's face. The night she showed up at my house, shaking, whispering, "He'll kill me if I leave." When I woke, my pillow was wet with tears I didn't remember shedding. For the next few days, the tension grew. He was quiet, unpredictable, sometimes kind, sometimes cruel. His moods shifted like the wind. Then one evening, I came home from the market to find him sitting on the sofa, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He smiled as I entered. Sit with me. I hesitated. Don't make me ask twice. I sat. He leaned back, studying me. Do you ever think about us? Every day, I said carefully. And what do you think? That we've been through a lot. He laughed softly. That's one way to put it. His tone turned serious. You know, I used to love you more than anything. You were perfect, gentle, obedient. I said nothing. He looked at me over the rim of his glass. Now you're different, stronger, sharper. It's fascinating, really. It's almost like you're someone else. My stomach twisted. He leaned closer. Tell me, Liana, do you still love me? I forced myself to meet his eyes. Do you still love me? He smiled, touché. He stood walking toward the window. Love, a funny thing, it makes people do stupid things, like lie or pretend. My heart thudded. He turned, holding something behind his back. When he lifted it, I froze. It was a photo of me and Liana. We were hugging, smiling. The date was recent. I found this in the attic, he said. Imagine my surprise. I tried to speak, but no sound came. He walked closer, holding the photo out like evidence. You want to tell me why my wife has a twin I never met? I felt the blood drain from my face. He laughed quietly. Oh, don't look so shocked. You really thought you could hide something like this. He was too close now. His breath brushed my face. I knew from the beginning, you know, the moment you looked at me differently, you weren't her. My chest tightened. So what now? I whispered. He smiled. Now I decide what to do with you. He turned away, swirling the whiskey in his glass. I could go to the police, tell them you lied, tell them you tricked me. You'd go to prison for what you did to her, I said before I could stop myself. He froze. Careful, he said softly. That sounds like a threat. It's a truth. He turned, eyes blazing. Don't test me. I stood my ground. What will you do, Evan? Hit me, like you did her. His hand twitched, but he didn't move. I'm not her, I whispered. He stared at me for a long moment, then smiled, slow and cold. No, you're worse. He left the room without another word. I stood there shaking, my heart pounding in my throat. He knew everything. That night I called Liana. He found out, I whispered. He knows about us. Her voice broke. Oh God, Maya, what do we do? Nothing, I said. Stay hidden, don't come back. But, I mean it, Liana. He's dangerous. He's unraveling. I could hear her crying on the other end. I should have left him long ago. This is my fault. No, I said, tears filling my own eyes. This is his fault, and I won't let him win. When I hung up, the house was silent, too silent. Then I heard it, a creak upstairs, footsteps, slow, careful. My blood turned to ice. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a lamp, and moved toward the stairs. The light flickered. The air felt thick. Evan, I called. No answer. Another creak. I climbed slowly, every step echoing. At the top, the hallway stretched out, shadows dancing across the walls. The bedroom door was open. Inside, the window was wide, the curtains swaying in the wind. And on the floor, another rose. Beside it, a Polaroid. It was me, sleeping. I dropped the lamp. The photo slipped from my shaking hands. He'd been in the room, watching me, taking pictures. I ran to the phone, no signal. The lights flickered again. Then I heard his voice behind me. Looking for me. I spun around. He was standing in the doorway, calm, smiling. Evan. Don't, he raised a finger. You've had your fun, now it's my turn. He took a step closer. You think you can humiliate me, make me your little project, you and your pathetic sister. I backed away. You don't understand. Oh, I understand, he said. You wanted revenge, you wanted to hurt me the way she couldn't. His voice dropped lower. And you did, congratulations, you broke me. For a moment, I saw something human in his face, pain, fear, confusion. But it vanished as quickly as it came. He lunged. I screamed, ducking to the side. The lamp shattered as he swung it, missing me by inches. I ran toward the stairs, but he caught my arm, pulling me back. Let go, I shouted, struggling. Tell me who you really are, he roared. I'm the woman you destroyed, I cried, and I'm done being afraid of you. The words hit him like a slap. His grip loosened for a second, just enough. I shoved him back, hard. He stumbled, losing balance. For one horrifying moment, time froze. Then he fell. The sound of his body hitting the stairs echoed through the house. I stood there shaking, staring down at him. His eyes were open, blank. I didn't move for a long time. When I finally did, I went to him. My hands trembled as I reached for his pulse. Nothing. He was gone. My breath came in ragged gasps. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the rain outside. Then I saw it, his phone, lying beside him, the screen still lit. A message draft was open, to Julia. She's not who she says she is. Call the police. I deleted it. Then I sat on the stairs, my hands covered in his blood, and I started to cry. Not because I was guilty, not because I was relieved, but because I knew what came next. I'd have to disappear. And this time, I wouldn't have a twin to save me. The house was so still I could hear the rain outside hitting the roof, soft and steady, as if nothing terrible had just happened. My heart thudded in my chest like it was trying to warn me, move, Maya, move, but I couldn't. Evan's body lay sprawled at the bottom of the stairs. His head was turned at an odd angle, one arm bent unnaturally beneath him. There was blood, not much, but enough to stain the wood, enough to remind me this wasn't a dream. For a long time, I just stood there. I could taste metal in my mouth. My hands trembled so violently, I had to hold the railing to keep from falling myself. I hadn't meant to kill him. God, I hadn't. But he was dead. And I knew what would come next: suspicion, questions, headlines. Abusive husband found dead, wife missing. Except I wasn't his wife. That thought sliced through the haze like a knife. I was standing in a house full of lies, a dead man, a stolen name, and a plan that had gone too far. I took a step down the stairs, then another. My knees almost buckled when I reached him. His eyes were open, glassy, staring at nothing. Evan, I whispered, but the name tasted bitter on my tongue. My voice cracked. You shouldn't have made me do this. The words hung in the air, useless, meaningless. I grabbed his phone from the floor and locked it away in the drawer. Then I wiped the doorknobs, the railing, every place my trembling hands might have touched. My mind worked faster than my heart could keep up, clean, erase, hide. There was no time to fall apart. By the time I was done, my clothes were soaked with sweat and tears. I went to the sink, splashed cold water on my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked like a stranger, wild eyes, pale skin, blood at the edge of my sleeve. "I'm not her," I whispered. "I'm not her." But the mirror didn't believe me. It was nearly midnight when I wrapped his body in a blanket. I dragged him inch by inch out to the garage. My arms screamed, my back burned, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy and damp. I opened the car trunk and stared at the empty space. That's when I started crying again. Not out of guilt, but out of exhaustion, out of the weight of everything I had carried since the day Liana walked into my apartment with bruises blooming like violets across her skin. When it was done, I sank to the floor, shaking. I called Liana. She answered on the third ring, sleepy and scared. "Maya, what's wrong?" My throat tightened. "He's gone." "What do you mean gone?" "He's dead, Liana." The silence on the other end stretched too long. "No," she whispered finally. "No, no, no. It wasn't planned. He attacked me, he fell." "Oh my God, Maya," her voice cracked into sobs. "What have we done?" "I need to disappear," I said. "Now." "Maya." "I mean it, don't come here, don't try to help. They'll think it was you, you need to stay where you are." She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "We can fix this. Please, we'll go to the police, tell them the truth." "The truth," I said, laughing bitterly. "That I pretended to be you, that I killed your husband while living under your name, they'll bury us both, Liana." She went quiet. "I'll handle it," I whispered. "You just stay alive, promise me." "I promise," she said through tears. Then I hung up. The next hours blurred into a strange rhythm, cleaning, burning, wiping, erasing. I deleted every message, every trace of him from both our phones. I poured whiskey around the broken glass to make it smell like an accident. Before dawn, I drove to the cliffs outside town, the sea raging beneath them. The air was cold, biting. I stood there staring at the water and whispered, "This is for you, Liana." Then I pushed the car, his car, over the edge. It tumbled silently into the darkness below, swallowed by the ocean. When the sound faded, I felt hollow, empty. The next few days passed in fragments. I stayed at a motel miles away, under a fake name. Every knock on the door made me flinch. Every siren in the distance made my heart skip. Then it happened, the news broke. I watched it on the tiny TV, the reporter's voice too calm for what she was saying. Local businessman Evan Taylor was found dead in what police are calling a tragic accident. His wife, Liana Taylor, has not been located and is now a person of interest in the case. There it was, her name. My sister's name. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. They thought she did it. Of course they did. I wanted to call the police, tell them everything. But every scenario I imagined ended the same way, both of us destroyed. So I stayed silent. A week later, I found Liana. She was waiting for me at a bus station 2 towns away. She looked smaller somehow, fragile in her oversized coat. When she saw me, she ran forward, throwing her arms around me. "Maya," she sobbed, "what have you done?" I held her tightly. "I did what you couldn't." "I never wanted this," she cried. "I just wanted to be free." "You are free," I said softly. She pulled back, her eyes full of tears and anger. "No, I'm hunted. They think I killed him." I looked away. "It's better that way." She grabbed my shoulders. "How can you say that?" "Because I can't undo what's done," I whispered. "I can only protect you." She shook her head. "You're not protecting me, you're sacrificing yourself." Someone had to. We sat in silence, the noise of the buses echoing around us. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "What now?" "You leave, start over. Somewhere far, I'll stay here. If they find me, I'll take the blame." "No," she said fiercely. "I won't let you do that." "Liana." "No," she shouted, drawing stairs. "You've done enough, you saved me once. I won't let you die for it." Her voice cracked on the last word. I wanted to tell her it was too late, that part of me had already died the night I put his body in the trunk. But I didn't, I just nodded. We checked into a small in that night under false names. We shared a single bed, just like when we were kids. I listened to her breathing beside me, steady and soft, and for the first time in months, I almost felt peace. Until the knock came. 3 short raps, firm, confident. Liana sat up instantly. Maya, she whispered. Don't move, I said. Another knock, louder. I opened the door a crack. A man stood there in a dark coat, holding a badge. Detective Cole, I need to speak with Mrs. Liana Taylor. My heart stopped. I forced a smile. She's not here. His eyes were sharp. We have reason to believe she might be. May I come in? I stepped back, of course. He entered slowly, scanning the room. Liana stayed hidden in the bathroom, silent. He turned to me. Do you know where your sister is, Ms. Maya Bennett? My stomach flipped, he knew. Why would you think I? He held up a photo, a still from a traffic camera. My car, me driving. I think you've been protecting her, he said, and I think you know more than you're saying. My mouth went dry. Mrs. Taylor's husband is dead, he said quietly. We just want to understand what happened. I met his gaze. It was an accident. Then why hide? Because truth is never enough, I wanted to say. Because sometimes the law can't save the right people. Instead, I whispered, because she was scared. He studied me for a moment, then sighed. If you hear from her, tell her to come forward. Running will only make it worse. When he left, Liana came out, pale as snow. He knows, she said. I nodded, we'll leave tonight. But as I packed, I realized something. There was no running from this, not forever. When she wasn't looking, I slipped her ID into her bag, the one with my photo under her name. At dawn, when she woke, I was gone. I left her a note. Live for both of us. Then I walked to the nearest police station. The man at the desk looked up. Can I help you? Yes, I said softly. My name is Liana Taylor. I'm here to turn myself in. As the handcuffs clicked around my wrists, a strange calm washed over me. For the first time in months, I wasn't pretending anymore. When the detective asked if I wanted to call anyone, I shook my head. No, I said, there's no one left to call. Outside, the morning sun broke through the clouds. I closed my eyes against the light. Freedom always comes with a price. And I had finally paid mine. The first night in the cell was the longest of my life. The walls smelled of cold metal and bleach, and the single bulb above me flickered like a dying heartbeat. Every sound, the clanging of a door, the murmur of guards, the echo of someone crying, felt sharp enough to cut through my skin. I sat on the narrow cot, knees pulled to my chest, staring at the gray wall. The silence pressed down on me until it was hard to breathe. I thought I understood what loneliness was before the nights alone in that house, pretending to be someone I wasn't, but this was different. This was emptiness. When morning came, a guard opened the door and said, Taylor, you're up. The name hit me like a slap. Taylor, not Bennett, not Maya, Liana Taylor. I wore that name now like a wound that wouldn't close. They led me down a corridor to a small room with 2 chairs and a table. A metal recorder sat in the middle. The detective from the inn, Cole, was already there. His face was tired, his eyes sharper than I remembered. He nodded for me to sit. You ready to tell me what happened? I didn't answer right away. The truth was too heavy, too tangled. How could I explain something that had started with love and ended with death? He pressed a button on the recorder. State your name, please. Liana Taylor, I said quietly. He leaned forward. Liana, we found your husband's car at the bottom of the cliffs. There were traces of blood in the house, but not enough for us to believe it was an accident. You want to tell me your version before we find out the rest. I looked at my hands, the same hands that had dragged his body, wiped the floors, erased the evidence. It was an accident, I whispered. He waited. He came at me, I said, my voice trembling. He was angry. I tried to stop him. He fell. Cole studied me for a long moment. You expect me to believe that? Tears welled in my eyes. Believe what you want, that's the truth. He sighed, turning off the recorder. You know, Liana, I've been doing this job for 20 years, and I can tell when someone's lying to protect someone else. I froze. He leaned closer. You're not protecting him, are you? So who is it? My pulse quickened. There's no one. Then why do you keep looking over your shoulder when you talk? He asked softly. Why do you look like you're waiting for someone to walk through that door? I bit my lip hard enough to taste blood. He sat back, eyes still on me. Who are you covering for, Maya? The world went silent. My head snapped up. What did you say? He didn't blink. I said, who are you covering for? You said my name. He didn't deny it. How? He slid a photo across the table. It was from years ago, a school picture of me and Liana, side by side. Identical smiles, identical eyes. You made a mistake, he said quietly. You used your real ID once, when you checked into the motel. It didn't take long to connect the dots. My throat closed. He folded his hands. I know you're not Liana, and I know she's out there somewhere. I swallowed hard. Then why am I here? Because you walked in here and said you were her, he said. You wanted to protect her, but I can't help you if you don't tell me everything. He leaned forward again. Tell me what happened, Maya. For a long time, I couldn't speak. Then, slowly, the words began to spill out. I told him everything. The bruises, the plan, the switch, the months of pretending, the night Evan fell. When I finished, the room was silent except for the hum of the air vent. Cole rubbed his face. Jesus. I looked at him through blurry eyes. You believe me? He sighed. I believe you didn't mean for it to happen, but that doesn't make you innocent. I nodded. I know. He looked at me again, softer now. You loved her that much, huh? She was my sister, I whispered. She didn't deserve to die for surviving him. He nodded slowly, then stood. I'll do what I can to help you, but Maya, the truth has a way of finding its own price. When he left, I sat alone, trembling. I'd said everything. There was nothing left to hide. But part of me wondered if I'd just signed my own death warrant. The days turned into weeks. The court hearings blurred together, gray walls, gray suits, gray skis. Every time I stood before the judge, I felt smaller. The prosecutor called it manslaughter under the guise of deception. The defense called it a tragic act of self-defense. I called it survival. Sometimes, when the courtroom emptied, I'd look at the empty seats and imagine Liana sitting there. I knew she was alive, hiding somewhere. I hoped she wasn't watching the news. I hoped she didn't see the photos of me, my head bowed, my wrists cuffed. The trial dragged on for months. Cole testified on my behalf. He told the court about the bruises, the police reports that were never filed, the neighbors who heard screams but said nothing. But the world doesn't forgive easily, especially not women who take justice into their own hands. When the verdict came, I stood without shaking. The judge's words blurred in my ears until only one sentence broke through. 3 years imprisonment. 3 years. It should have felt like a relief, but all I felt was empty. When they led me away, I heard a whisper from the back of the courtroom. Maya. I turned. Liana stood there. She wore a black coat and dark glasses, her hair tied back. Our eyes met for one brief second. Then she disappeared into the crowd. I wanted to call out, but the guards pulled me forward. Prison was nothing like I'd imagined. It wasn't the violence that broke me, it was the silence. Days bled into nights. Time became meaningless. I stopped counting. I spent most of my days in the library, reading everything I could find, novels, poetry, law books. Anything that reminded me I was still alive. Sometimes I'd hear women crying in their bunks. Some of them were here for drugs, some for theft, a few for killing men who hurt them. We never judged each other. One night, a woman named Clara asked me quietly, "You ever regret it?" I stared at the ceiling for a long time before answering. Every day. "But would you take it back?" she asked. I turned to her. "No." She smiled sadly. "Then you did what you had to." That night, I dreamt of the sea, the car sinking beneath the waves, the wind howling like a ghost. I woke up crying. 2 years passed before I saw Liana again. She came during visiting hours one gray afternoon. She looked different, stronger, older. Her eyes, once haunted, were clear now. When she saw me, she broke down. I tried to take the blame, Maya. I went to the police, but they wouldn't listen. They said the case was closed. I reached through the glass, my fingers trembling against hers. "You don't have to try anymore." Her voice shook. "You shouldn't be here." "I made a choice," I said softly. "I can live with it." Tears streamed down her face. "How can you be so calm?" "Because for the first time he can't touch us," I whispered. "Not you, not me, not ever again." We sat there in silence, hands pressed to the glass, two reflections of the same broken soul. When the guard said time was up, She looked at me like she wanted to memorize my face. "I'll be waiting for you," she said. I smiled faintly. "No, you'll be living for me." She nodded, crying, "I love you." "I love you too, Lee." She walked away without looking back. That was the last time I saw her. The day I was released, the sky was a perfect blue. The kind of blue that almost hurts to look at after years of gray. I walked out of the gates with a small bag of belongings. A few books, letters from Liana, and a photo of us from before everything went wrong. I didn't know where she was. She stopped writing the last few months. Maybe it was safer that way. I found a small apartment near the coast, got a job cleaning rooms at a motel. Every morning, I walked to the cliffs where I'd push the car and stood there, watching the waves crash below. Sometimes, when the wind was strong, I could almost hear his voice, angry, mocking, fatting into the sea. Other times, I heard hers soft, distant, calling my name. People think freedom is a door you walk through, but it is. It's the silence that follows when everything else has been taken. And in that silence, I learned the hardest truth of all, that love and guilt can live in the same heart, side by side, like sisters. It had been almost a year since I walked out of those prison gates. The world outside looked the same, people still hurried through their days, cars still hummed down the streets, children still laughed, but everything inside me had changed. Freedom wasn't loud or bright. It was quiet. It was the smell of rain on the coast, the sound of seagulls, the simple piece of breathing air that didn't taste like iron and despair. I'd built a small life for myself. I rented a tiny apartment near the ocean, just 2 rooms and a window that faced the sea. In the mornings, I cleaned rooms at a motel. The work was simple, honest. No one asked questions. At night, I'd sit by the window with tea, listening to the wind. Sometimes I wondered where Liana was. I hadn't heard from her in months. The last letter she sent had only one line, "I'm trying to live, Maya." I hoped she was. God, I hoped she was happy. But deep down, I knew happiness wasn't something women like us ever truly found. It was something we borrowed briefly, before the world remembered who we were. One gray morning, as I was stripping a motel bed, the manager, Mrs. Doyle, called out from the lobby. "Maya, someone here for you." I froze. No one was ever here for me. When I walked to the front, a man stood waiting by the counter. He wore a dark coat, and when he turned, my breath caught. "Detective Cole." "Hello, Maya," he said softly. For a moment, I couldn't speak. "How did you find me?" He shrugged. "You're not that hard to find when you use your real name on a lease." I looked down. "You're not here to arrest me again, are you?" "No," he said. "I just needed to see you." Something in his tone made my stomach twist. "What happened?" He hesitated. "It's about your sister." My heart stilled. "She's gone." The world tilted. "What do you mean gone?" "She was found in a small town up north," he said. "There was an accident, a fire." "No," my voice cracked. "No, she was fine, she was safe." "I'm sorry." I felt my knees weaken. I gripped the counter to keep from collapsing. "You're lying." He shook his head. "I wouldn't come here if I wasn't sure." Tears blurred my vision. "She can't be dead, not after everything." "She wasn't alone," he said quietly. "We found her husband's photo in her home, a newer one. She kept it hidden." I looked at him sharply. "Evan." He nodded. She'd drawn over it, scratched out his face. I pressed a shaking hand to my mouth. "She never escaped him, did she?" Cole sighed. "Some ghosts don't let go, even after they're gone." I couldn't breathe. The walls of the motel seemed to close in around me. He handed me an envelope. "This was found among her things. It's addressed to you." My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter, Liana's handwriting, small and delicate. "Maya, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't outrun the past. I've tried to live like you told me, but I see him everywhere in my dreams, in every mirror, in every man who raises his voice. I can't escape the feeling that he's still watching me. Maybe it's guilt, maybe it's punishment, but I want you to know something before it's too late. I forgive you. For everything. You saved me once. Maybe I couldn't save myself, but I'll always carry your love. Live, Maya, don't bury yourself like I did. Live for both of us." The paper blurred as my tears fell. I pressed the letter to my chest and whispered, "You promised you. Live." Cole stood silently beside me. "She must have loved you very much." She was my heart, I said, and now she's gone. He nodded. If it helps, the fire looked accidental, no foul play. But I didn't believe him. Because in my gut, I knew Liana had been slipping away for months. The fire was just the end of a slow burning that had started the day she met him. After he left, I sat by the ocean for hours, the letter clutched in my hand. The waves crashed against the rocks, endless and uncaring. I thought about everything we had done, the lies, the switch, the blood. We survived the man, but not the damage he left inside us. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her face, the way she smiled when we were little, the way she looked at me the night I promised to protect her. I'd kept that promise, but at what cost? The next morning, I packed a small bag and boarded a bus north. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just knew I had to see the place where she had spent her last days. It was a small town, quiet and gray, with houses lined up like soldiers. The cottage she'd rented was barely standing, charred walls, a broken roof. The fire had eaten everything. The air still smelled faintly of smoke. I walked through what was left of the doorway, careful not to step on the ash. The floor creaked under my feet. In one corner, half-burned photos lay scattered, images of us as children, smiling. The edges were blackened, curling inward like they were trying to swallow themselves. I knelt and picked one up. It was the two of us on our 17th birthday. We were laughing, cake smeared on our faces. I held it to my heart and whispered, "I'm sorry, Lee. I thought I was saving you. I didn't realize I was just giving you a slower death." As I stood to leave, something caught my eye, a small tin box under the ruined table. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me. I sat there on the floor, reading one after another. Maya, I dream about him every night. Maya, sometimes I hear footsteps outside my door. Maya, I think someone, watching me. Maya, I don't know what's real anymore. The last letter was unfinished. Maya, if I don't make it, promise me. It ended there, the rest had burned away. I cried until my throat hurt. When I left the house, the wind was sharp against my face. I walked to the cliffs nearby, a place not unlike the one where I'd ended Evan's life. The sea roared below, wild and endless. For a moment, I thought about stepping forward, about letting the water take me too. It would be easy, quiet. But then I heard her voice in my head, live for both of us. I stepped back. I stayed there until the sun dipped below the horizon, turning the sky a deep, aching red. As I turned to leave, I noticed someone standing at the edge of the road. Detective Cole. He walked toward me slowly. I thought I'd find you here. I didn't ask how. He stopped beside me, his hands in his coat pockets. I wanted to make sure you were okay. I laughed softly. Do I look okay? He shook his head. You look alive, that's something. We stood there in silence, the sea roaring beneath us. Why do you care? I asked finally. He hesitated. Because I've seen too many people lose themselves to grief, and I'd hate for that to be how your story ends. My story ended years ago, I said quietly. He looked at me, then write a new one. I turned toward the horizon. The waves crashed, the wind howled, and for the first time in a long while, I let myself feel the weight of everything, the pain, the love, the loss. When he left, I stayed a little longer. I took Liana's last letter and tore it gently into pieces. The wind caught the fragments, carrying them out over the sea. Go home, I whispered. You're free now. The pieces vanished into the dusk. I walked back down the path, my heart heavy but steady. The ghosts would follow me, I knew that, but maybe I could learn to live beside them instead of running from them. Freedom didn't mean forgetting. It meant surviving the memory. And I had survived everything else. Months passed after I visited the burnt house and scattered Liana's letters into the sea. The world slowly faded back into its rhythm, the tides coming and going, strangers passing by, the same gray clouds hovering over the coast. I went back to work at the motel, keeping my head down. I smiled at guests when I needed to, nodded when people greeted me, and kept my silence the rest of the time. Inside, I was still burning. Every night, I dreamed of her, not the broken, bruised Liana I had buried in my memories, but the girl she used to be. The one who laughed so loudly it filled the house, who painted our walls with wild colors and left her shoes by the door because she hated confinement. In my dreams, she would say, "You didn't save me, Maya, you just became me." And when I woke up, I always found the sea whispering outside my window like it was trying to tell me she was still there, watching. For a long time, I thought the ghosts would fade with time. But pain doesn't fade. It just changes shape from fire to silence. One morning, as I was cleaning a room, I found something on the nightstand that made my heart stop, a rose. Red, fresh. Just one. My hands went cold. I looked around, half expecting to see someone watching from the hallway. The door was open, but the corridor was empty. It couldn't be him. Evan was dead. I had seen his body, his blood, his fall. But the rose, that color, that scent, it dragged me back into that house, into that night. I picked it up carefully, trembling. A folded note was tucked under it. "You can run from your reflection, but you can't hide from it forever." No signature. No handwriting I recognized. My breath came in short bursts. For a moment, I thought I might faint. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the note. Was it a prank, a cruel joke, or something else? For the rest of the day, I couldn't concentrate. Every sound made me turn my head. Every shadow made me flinch. That night, I locked my apartment door and sat by the window, staring at the rose lying on the table. The wind howled outside, and in its voice, I thought I heard a whisper, "You can't bury him." I didn't sleep. The next morning, Detective Cole appeared again. He didn't knock this time, just showed up at the motel, his expression serious. "I need to talk to you," he said. "About what?" He hesitated. "There's something you should know. When we examined the remains from the fire, we found 2 sets of DNA. I froze, too. He nodded slowly. "One was your sister, the other we couldn't identify." My stomach twisted. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying it's possible someone else was in that house. Maybe the fire wasn't an accident." I felt the world tilt under my feet. "You think she was murdered?" "We don't know yet," he said gently, "but whoever left that rose, it wasn't random. Someone wanted you to know." I felt sick. "Do you think it was him?" I whispered. He frowned. "Evan Taylor's dead, you know that." "Do I?" I whispered. "I thought I did." He studied me for a long time. "Maya, grief can twist things. It can make you see ghosts where there are none." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But that night when I came home, another rose waited on my doorstep. This one blackened, wilted. And underneath it, a photo. It was me, standing at Liana's burnt house, the sea behind me. Someone had been watching. I fell to my knees, shaking, the photo slipping from my hands. How could this be happening? Who could it be? I called Cole, but the line went straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice trembling. "Someone's here, someone following me." No one called back. For 3 nights, the roses kept coming, one left by my window, one on my car, one tucked under my door. Each one with a note. "You buried the wrong ghost. She's still waiting for you. Come back to where it ended." By the 4th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed a small bag, took Liana's photo, and drove back to the cliff where it all began. The road was empty, the sky bruised with storm clouds. Rain started to fall, soft at first, then heavier. When I reached the top, I parked near the edge and got out. The sea roared beneath me, wild and merciless. The wind whipped my hair across my face as I shouted into the storm, "What do you want from me?" Only the waves answered. I took a step closer to the edge, the rain soaking through my clothes. I did everything I could. I saved her. Isn't that enough? Lightning split the sky. And in that flash, I saw something, a figure, standing a few feet away. A woman. Her hair plastered to her face, her clothes dark with rain. For a second, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But then she moved closer, and my heart stopped. It was Liana. Or someone who looked like her. I stumbled back, whispering, "No, no, you're gone." She tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Am I?" she said softly. Her voice was the same, gentle, haunting. I blinked, tears mixing with rain. "You died, the fire." She stepped closer, and I could see her eyes, those same gray eyes, only colder now. "Maybe I did. Maybe you burned too, Maya, you just didn't notice." My pulse thundered in my ears. "You're not real." She smiled faintly. Neither are you anymore. I closed my eyes, shaking my head. You're just a dream. When I opened them again, she was gone. Only the rain remained, and the wind howling through the cliffs. I fell to my knees, sobbing, my voice swallowed by the storm. Maybe it was my guilt, maybe it was the sea, maybe she really had come back. All I knew was that part of me had died there with her. When the storm finally eased, dawn crept over the horizon, soft and gray. I sat on the wet ground, exhausted, staring at the endless water below. The sun rose slowly, turning the waves gold. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful, like the world was forgiving me. I took the last rose from my bag, the red one, now fading, and threw it into the sea. Goodbye, Lee, I whispered. I love you. The wind carried my words away. When I drove back to town, I stopped at the small cemetery by the road. There, among the nameless stones, I placed a single wildflower and whispered, for the both of us. Because in some way, I knew she and I were no longer two people. We had become one story, one wound, one survival. That night, back in my apartment, I sat by the window as the tide came in. I could still feel her beside me, not haunting me, but holding me steady. I opened her last letter again. The edges were worn from my hands. Live for both of us. I whispered the words aloud, like a promise. Then, for the first time in years, I closed my eyes and slept without fear. And in my dream, she was there, not broken, not bruised, just smiling. She reached out her hand, and I took it. We stood by the sea, together again, the water calm for once. And I knew we were finally free.